This message comes from NPR sponsor Discover. Discover will automatically double all the cash back you've earned on your credit card at the end of your first year with Cash Back Match. It pays to Discover. See terms at discover.com/creditcard.
Hello, hello. I'm Brittany Luce, and you're listening to It's Been a Minute from NPR, a show about what's going on in culture and why it doesn't happen by accident. This week, we're connecting the dots between fire alarms, playing nice, and buckets of money. I know. How are all of these things connected? Well, we're going to find out with Politico Congress reporter Sarah Ferris and Capital B News national politics reporter Brandon Tensley. Sarah, Brandon, welcome to It's Been a Minute.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
So glad to have you both. And Sarah, I appreciate you calling in from the floor of the DNC. But to start, if you had to pick 3 people, living or dead, fictional or real, to be in a squad with you, who would you pick?
I would pick James Baldwin, Lorraine Hansberry, Whitney Houston. Nothing related to politics, but I feel like she'd be fun.
Whitney Houston's one of my picks, too, so I really appreciate that, Brandon. I appreciate that.
I'm going to stick with squad as a literal term, so I'm going to pick my favorite women's basketball players.
Okay.
I'm going to take Diana Taurasi, Gabby Williams, who almost defeated the USA team in the Olympics final. And then I'm going to have to say Breanna Stewart. I want Stewie.
I feel like y'all are going to be unstoppable. But my squad would actually also be Whitney Houston, but also Alexander the Great and Bert from Bert and Ernie. I just feel like you got a combination of like glamour, beauty, talent, sass, strategy, and also somebody who's going to take care of the details like Bert. I just feel like the 4 of us can take over the planet. You know what I'm saying? But we're not talking about our dream squads. We're talking about the Squad, the nickname for a loose, informal group of Democratic progressives in Congress that includes Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, and Ayanna Pressley, to name a few. These representatives are often known for speaking out on more left-leaning issues and for being dissenting voices within the Democratic Party. While the party's platform supports Israel along with a 2-state solution, some members of the Squad have been much more critical of Israel's military campaign in Gaza, like Michigan Representative Rashida Tlaib, who was seen holding up a sign that said war criminal when Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke before Congress in July. Now, some of these outspoken critics have lost their seats. Jamal Bowman in New York and Cori Bush of Missouri both lost their primaries. At the DNC this week, we saw the party unify behind Kamala Harris, but outside, PACs are targeting Democrats who aren't always running with the herd. Today, we're looking at what it means to speak out inside of your party and how the definition of progressive Democrat is kind of up for grabs. So both Bowman and Bush are vocal critics of Israel's handling of the war in Gaza. And the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, or AIPAC, spent a lot of money on their opponents' campaigns. In Bowman's case, AIPAC spent a record-breaking $14 million on supporting his opponent, George Latimer. I think a lot of people have heard of AIPAC, but just how big and influential is it?
Yeah, I mean, AIPAC is a pro-Israel lobbying group. Last year, AIPAC said that they would spend up to $100 million to sort of field challengers to some of the most vocal critics of what's happening in Israel and Gaza.
And I think what else is good to know about these groups is that there's been sort of a reckoning in the last couple of years that AIPAC and other pro-Israel groups figured out that they could spend a lot of money in American politics. They could jump into a competitive swing seat and try to influence who's going to win that, and they had been doing that for years. Then they realized we can get a lot more bang for our buck by spending in the primaries that happened during the summer. It's a much smaller share of voters that you're even talking about.
Sure.
So this has happened before. There was an open seat in Michigan Our two sitting members of Congress were going for the same seat because of some of the redistricting issues they had in Michigan. So AIPAC successfully pushed out progressive Andy Levin. That was 2 years ago. And so now we're seeing that they're sort of targeting these so-called squad members. They're consolidating their power, and they're spending a lot more money. These are just really bonkers numbers. Other members of Congress are afraid. $10 million accentuates anybody's political liabilities.
Absolutely. Especially, as you said, when you're dealing with a local campaign and the constituency is just so much smaller, that money can go a real long way. I mean, I'm from Michigan, and I'm familiar with the Levin family political dynasty in the state of Michigan. You got Sander Levin and Carl Levin. You know, these are people who have held some of the highest offices that you can hold in the state of Michigan for generations. And Andy Levin himself is a self-described Zionist, but I know that he had a different view of what Israeli policy should be than AIPAC did. You know, some people have thought that that might have been the reason why they wanted to push Andy Levin out. As you said, that really speaks to how powerful AIPAC is.
I would say in terms of influence, massively influential when you think about the potential of it weighing into these local races actually weighs a lot on these candidates, right? And so with Ilhan Omar, she was like, you know, this could be something that really threatens my campaign. And so she raised a ton of money this time around in preparation for a potential attack from AIPAC. And so just in terms of like how AIPAC can shape how candidates approach their campaigns is huge.
And I recently spoke to Bernie Sanders about this. This is his issue, right? He is always talking about billionaires spending money in politics. Right. And he told me, he said, it bothers me that there has not been more outrage of this. There's a lot of billionaires spending money in elections. There's a huge crypto movement that's dumping billions of dollars into races, right? But with AIPAC, what Sanders was telling me about, and this is what he said, it is the intimidating presence they have over every member of Congress. And so he's saying, you know, it's not just the squad, but there's other members of Congress who also have a lot of criticism of the Israeli government. And it's essentially a chilling effect where members of Congress do not want to draw the attention of AIPAC, because often AIPAC is not actually airing their comments about Israel, about Gaza, about the war. They do ads exposing other kinds of weaknesses. They're pulling up whatever they can against you.
And so, yeah, to that point, I want to talk about, I mean, what made Bowman and Bush uniquely vulnerable to being unseated in this position?
So Jamal Bowman has really had a really interesting couple of years in Congress. He would kind of almost antagonize Republicans. I've seen this where he would go up to them in the hallway and sort of start verbal fights to just press them on things. And it would sort of go viral where it was just kind of these bizarre moments where I had other Democrats saying, I don't really know kind of what the game plan is here. But so he'd have these kind of strange encounters already. And then came the pulling the false fire alarm in the Capitol last year. And this was a huge deal. He ended up pleading guilty to setting off a false fire alarm. This became a huge issue.
Right. He says it was an accident, but Republicans accused him of trying to stop a vote on a funding bill. Okay, what about Representative Cori Bush?
She is under federal investigation after hiring her now husband to provide her personal security. And Brandon, I'm sure you have other thoughts on that as well, but that's kind of the big one.
I would just add, in addition to that investigation, people have used her voting record as a way to also make her a little bit more vulnerable, right? Voting against the infrastructure bill that compounds some of the vulnerabilities that she was specifically facing as well.
Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush are both Black people, both Black politicians. Critics of AIPAC have accused the organization of targeting Black progressives specifically, though in a statement to The Intercept, the organization touted its donations to more than half of the Congressional Black Caucus and said it bases its decisions on statements about Israel exclusively. Also, in a mailer paid for by AIPAC's Super PAC, Bush's image appears manipulated in a way that she felt was racist. In a statement to The Intercept, she said, quote, "The people of St. Louis deserve better than to see their first Black congresswoman racistly distorted into a caricature." Her opponent, Wesley Bell, is Black, and in a statement to The Hill, a spokesperson for AIPAC's Super PAC called those claims, quote, "completely false and absurd." So there's a lot here, but I do wonder, how does race play into this whole thing? Brandon, I'd love to hear from you on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really tricky, right? Because when you're able to point to the fact that you do support and back Black candidates, that does give you a kind of cover, right? But then also if you are, facing allegations that you're altering people's images as a way to potentially prey on people's like deeper biases or prejudices or something like that, that is racist, right? Like it is possible to both back Black candidates and to also sort of inflame racist thinking. It is really, really tricky territory.
I talked to a lot of progressive Democrats about how to fight back on this because there's a lot of concern within congressional Democrats about how do we protect the ranks of folks who are willing to speak out against Israel, particularly members of color. It's just a really complicated issue when you think about who makes up, for example, the Congressional Progressive Caucus in Congress. You have Shontel Brown in Ohio, who is a member of the Progressive Caucus, and yet she was someone who was lifted by these pro-Israel groups over a sitting incumbent. So how do you mobilize the Congressional Progressive Caucus, which has its own outside spending PAC? They technically can get involved in these primaries and help their members. But what do you do when you have members who are getting money from AIPAC who end up in the same groups as these other members, right? So it's really complicated, and there's longstanding conversations about should there be a more narrow definition of a progressive in Congress? Should we be a little bit more exclusive so that you can actually organize and fight back?
That's interesting. So it's like this, almost like an identity crisis.
Right, because the members who defeated Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman are expected to join the Congressional Progressive Caucus. That is wild.
What do they say? One band, one sound. All together. That's very interesting. That makes me think about how this fissure is indicative of a deeper fissure between moderates and progressives in the Democratic Party that's been apparent for years. It feels especially pronounced now, especially over the past 10 months or so. How does this fit with the larger trend of division within the Democratic Party?
As I sit here in the DNC convention hall.
Right. You've been at the convention all week. So I'm like, what have you seen?
Right. So first of all, we were all waiting for these giant protests. I personally haven't even seen a protester except on CNN. So first of all, I think that did not force the party to confront this issue as it maybe could have. Second, I am so amused watching the Democratic Party trip over themselves to be so unified. No one wants to have a policy disagreement. I've been asking members all week, what do you want to see a potential President Harris outline for her agenda, talking about these kinds of issues that this party has been very divided over. And they are so careful to not say anything that will cause an issue. They're getting in line. And I talked to somebody yesterday, Greg Meets from New York, and he's like, policy comes on November 6th. Let's talk about policy right after the election. Then we can get into the fights.
I've heard that too. Yeah, absolutely.
Gosh, you guys are giving me so much to think about. We will see what happens as we continue to look at more of these local races and, of course, the national race. Brandon, Sarah, I have learned so much here from you both. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And as a thank you, I'd like to teach you something by playing a game with the two of you. Can you stick around for a tiny bit longer?
Of course.
Yes.
All right. We'll be right back with a little game I like to call, But Did You Know? Stick around.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Discover. It's good to share helpful knowledge, so here's a tip that could be doubly helpful. Discover will automatically double all the cash back you've earned on your credit card at the end of your first year with Cashback Match. That means you could turn $150 cash back to $300. It pays to Discover. See terms at discover.com/creditcard. This message comes from NPR sponsor BetterHelp. When your schedule is packed with kids' activities or big work projects and you feel like you have no time for yourself, self-care non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try and get 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/NPR.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Bluehost. Try Bluehost Cloud, the hosting plan made for WordPress creators by WordPress experts. With 100% uptime, fast load times, and 24/7 support, your sites can handle high traffic spikes. Visit Bluehost.com.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Mint Mobile. From the gas pump to the grocery store, inflation is everywhere. So Mint Mobile is offering premium wireless starting at just $15 a month. To get your new phone plan for just $15, go to mintmobile.com/switch.
All right. We're going to play a little game I like to call, But Did You Know? Here's how it works. I'm going to share a story that's been making headlines this week, and as I give you some background on the story, I'll also ask you trivia related to it. But don't worry, it is all multiple choice. The right answer is in there somewhere. And the first one to blurt out the right answer gets a point. Person with the most points wins, and their prize is bragging rights. Are y'all ready?
I'm ready.
No, I'm not ready, but yes.
It's fine. It's a different topic. The Burning Man Festival starts August 25th. The week-long event has been going on since 1986. It's basically a big party in the Nevada desert. The theme this year is Curiouser and Curiouser, a little nod to Alice in Wonderland. I wonder, do y'all think that there are people who are going straight from DNC to Burning Man?
I could definitely see that. Probably Little John himself. He's probably going.
All right. Well, to start off, first question, okay? The playa is the dried lake bed that Burning Man happens on top of, okay? What is playa foot? Is it A, a giant foot sculpture that reappears mysteriously every year? B, a measure of distance specific to Burning Man that is roughly the same length as a bicycle? Or C, a chemical burn to the feet that the local dust causes?
I'm going to blurt out C. I have no idea what the answer is, though.
I was going to say A. I have no idea.
Well, Brandon, you were right. Playa foot is a chemical burn caused by the alkali dust that's all over the ground. I don't know what that is, but it seems bad. Burners, those not necessarily affected, but those at Burning Man, burners, or they're called burners, are recommended not to go barefoot.
Yuck.
So playa foot is, unfortunately, not a measure of distance specific to Burning Man that is roughly the same length as a bicycle. But if you were to make up your own measure of distance, what would it be?
I feel like I use my phone as a measurement tool quite often. You know?
5 phones. That's 5 phones away.
I would say how many songs away is something. Because I listen to music so frequently that I'm like, can I listen to 1 song, 2 songs? Like, what are we talking about?
Oh, that is clever, Brandon. All right. Well, question number 2, on to the next. Which of these events is not planned for Burning Man this year? A, jousting. B, tattoo, as in the Russian pop duo, and temporary tattoo hour. Or C, a continuous week-long Buffy the Vampire Slayer live-action roleplay.
I'm going to say B.
I think the Buffy one, was that C?
Sarah says C, and you know what, Sarah? Good thing you did, because the answer is C, a continuous Buffy LARP. I don't know. I thought that the jousting would just stick to the Renaissance Fair. That's just me. To recap the score, Sarah, you are at 1 point. Brandon, you are at 1 point. So without further ado, the tie-breaking final question. All right. Burning Man has its very own post office and DMV. But what does DMV stand for in this case? Is it A, Department of Mutant Vehicles, B, Department of Making Visions, or C, Division of Marvelous Vinyl?
I think it's got to be the vinyl.
Yeah, I'm going to go with C.
I'm sorry. You both were wrong.
No.
The answer is A, Department of Mutant Vehicles. People love making wild cars for Burning Man, apparently. I guess it's like maybe like a crusty, rusty, dusty Pimp My Ride. I saw someone make a giant vacuum cleaner to ride around in, as well as a replica of the USS Raleigh, a ship captured by the British during the Revolution. But this department, the Department of Mutant Vehicles, makes sure that these mutant vehicles are not so souped up that they become unsafe, which is kind of nice.
Okay.
There we go. I'm like, a place where you can get playa foot actually cares about vehicular safety. But there you go. So if you could rig any kind of wild car you wanted, what would it look like? I know myself, I would want one of those like stretch limos from maybe like the 80s or 90s that had a pool in the back.
I watched or rewatched Mad Max Fury Road recently, And not gonna lie, I'm like not a huge like car person. Both those cars looked really fun.
All right, so you want a real life Mad Max vehicle. I'm with that.
I do.
I'm with that. What about you, Sarah?
I've been enjoying this cooler weather that makes me think of fall, and so I think I want like a hayride type, like fall themed. You know, you got like the bales of hay, you got the pumpkins, and you got like maybe like apple cider bucket or something. I don't know. Like,
I mean, it's almost Gilmore Girls, Stars Hollow season, so that tracks.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I'm loving these picks. Sadly, neither of you won today, but I guess that means you're going to have to come back for a rematch to break this draw.
just don't make me go to Burning Man.
Okay, I promise. Also, we don't have the budget for that. All right, well, that is it for But Did You Know for this week. Thank you both so much for playing this game with me. And Brandon, Sarah, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Political Congress reporter Sarah Ferris and Capital B News national politics reporter Brandon Tensley. I'm going to take a quick break, and when I get back, I sit down with actor Colman Domingo to talk about his new film, Sing Sing. Stick around.
This message comes from Progressive Insurance, where drivers who save by switching save nearly $750 on average. Get your quote at Progressive.com and see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $744 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2022 and May 2023. Potential savings will vary.
This message comes from NPR sponsor MIDI Health. Women in midlife face a healthcare desert, but MIDI is here to fill the gap, offering expert care for perimenopause and menopause covered by insurance. Hot flashes, insomnia, brain fog, weight gain, and moodiness don't have to be accepted as just another part of aging. MIDI clinicians understand how these symptoms can connect to menopause and prescribe a wide range of solutions. Book your visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com.
This message comes from Noom, using psychology and biology to build personal meal plans to fit your lifestyle, taking into account dietary restrictions, medical issues, and other personal needs with daily lessons that are personalized to you and your goals. Noom's flexible program focuses on progress instead of perfection to help you build new habits for a healthier lifestyle. Sign up for your trial today at Noom.com.
This message comes from NPR sponsor MIDI Health. If you're a woman over 40 dealing with hot flashes, insomnia, weight gain, or brain fog, you don't have to accept it as just another part of aging. The clinicians at MIDI Health understand what you're experiencing and know how to help. MIDI Health provides specialized care for perimenopause and menopause covered by insurance. Book your visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com.
My next guest and I go way back. I don't know if you remember this at all, but I was like an intern at Logo way back when you were auditioning.
Mm-hmm.
You were auditioning for the Big Gay Sketch Show, and I remember your audition and how excited everybody was to cast you, and how I was like, I'm gonna get you on my show. And I didn't get you then.
Okay.
But we got you now.
Right. Wow, look at our journey together, huh?
Look at our journey together. That's Oscar-nominated star of screen and stage, Colman Domingo. He's been enjoying the last couple of years across all of our screens, whether you know him from his role as Ali on Euphoria.
But haven't you heard, man? Revolutions are no longer radical.
Or as Mr. in the Color Purple remake.
Who the daddy?
Or as Bayard Rustin in the film Rustin.
Each of us are taught in ways both cunning and cruel that we are inadequate.
And let me tell you, this man has range. In every performance, he is expanding the way Black men are seen on film. And his newest movie is no exception. It's called Sing Sing, and it's one of the most affecting, emotionally resonant films I have seen possibly ever. It's based on the true story of Divine G, a man incarcerated in the high-security New York prison Sing Sing, who helped start a theater troupe, Rehabilitation Through the Arts, or RTA.
Because it helps people get more in touch with their feelings and able to process and actually move through and truly get some rehabilitation.
And one of the most extraordinary parts of the film is that most of the supporting cast are formerly incarcerated actors who trained with RTA and are playing characters based on themselves.
Brother, we here to become human again, to put on nice clothes and dance around and enjoy the things that is not in our reality.
And so it was an honor to talk with Colman Domingo about everything from expanding our notions of masculinity to how he's paving the way for a new kind of Hollywood star. Colman Domingo, welcome to It's Been a Minute.
Hey, thank you so much, Brittany. It really has been a minute, huh?
It really has been a minute. It really has been a minute. But I am very happy to be talking with you today and about such a wonderful film, Sing Sing. This is one of the best films I've ever seen. And I've seen it twice. To see so many men grow as artists and to fall in love with something and each other in a way. It was just so beautiful. On my first viewing of the film, I actually had no idea that many of the men who starred alongside you in the film had themselves gone through the RTA program.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder, what was it like for you to work with so many men who had that training background? And what did you learn from them about your art?
You know, it's funny. The simplest answer actually is, I feel like we all come from very different backgrounds. And now we're coming together on this one project to share whatever gifts we have. And I just met them where they were. And we all are supposed to teach each other something. I've always believed you can have conservatory training anywhere. Theirs just happened to be inside a prison like Sing Sing. They have a deep respect, a profound respect for the work. It is people who have had this life experience, but also have craftsmanship, playing a version of themselves.
Which is very difficult. It's very difficult to play a version of yourself because you can't get outside yourself. So I was really blown away by that.
I think so. A version of yourself, and really, really craft a character that has to live in 100 minutes of a film. I'm the senior actor on set. I know that more than anything, I had to be the soul of the production and guide these men in terms of like how we're going to make this film and how we're going to modulate performance that we may have experienced in classroom settings or theatrical settings, but now for film. So I think that more than anything, it was more about like, being in the center and how are we going to make this thing that, many of them didn't know how to make.
It sounds like there's just a constant artistic conversation that's happening at all times that it's hard to whittle it down.
And I guess you're right. I guess since I was also a producer on it as well, I couldn't just be an actor in this. I had to really help guide and shape a lot of it, with Greg and with Clint.
Right. The director and one of the writers.
Really being beholden to what we agreed to make from the very beginning, that we were going to smash tropes about toxic masculinity and smash tropes about Black and brown men, offer moments of tenderness, but also to make sure that it wasn't being sentimental. That was another thing that I was absolutely watching out for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that really stood out to me when I was watching the film was that I felt like it showed examples of healthy masculinity. And it felt revelatory, but it also felt accessible. And I really like the word that you use. It didn't feel sentimental. The men of RTA in the film encourage each other. They're vulnerable with each other.
Yeah. And they also still have conflict. They also have conflict.
Yeah,
exactly.
like people do.
Absolutely. They have very different ways
like anybody
of living.
does when they're in close quarters together.
Yeah, and I feel like that's anyone who knows how to build anything, especially something artistic together, know that you've got to leave something behind in order to gain something that's more communal. Yeah.
When you say leave something behind, you mean like ego?
Ego, a way of being that may not be useful for the group. Just like bringing in your life experience. You're like, okay, anytime I do anything in the theater, you're like, remember, leave that stuff on the outside. This has to be a safe space. How do you create a safe space, quote unquote, in the center of a prison? A true safe space that's made for vulnerability, which is dangerous in those spaces, to engage in that way. So I feel like the idea that that's what I gleaned, whether they were able to articulate it to me, that's what they created with this arts program. So that's what I wanted to lean into. I don't think anybody actually told me that that's what it was, but I'm like, that's what I know what happened. And that's why you were really holding on to it and respecting it. because it was a safe space to really do the real work of healing, which requires all of your emotions, all of your feelings, processing trauma, processing where you are and what you hope to be.
The other thing that I noticed too, our team was writing questions to talk to you, and we were trying to kind of nail down what about masculinity that the film is displaying, and I couldn't find the words for it. And I realized it reminded me how masculinity is not necessarily always inherently defined, but enforced. And the way that the men in the film communicated with each other enforced vulnerability as a value, and being open with each other as a value, and being kind and loving as a value, and did not enforce that those things made you weak or less than or deserved social punishment.
What you just said there was the light bulb for all of us as we were exploring making this film. That these men are saying that this is part of our survival, to have all of these feelings, to have all this softness and tenderness. And it has nothing to do with sexuality whatsoever. It's more about mental health. It's about being good and kind to yourself and acknowledging your feelings and acknowledging your heartache, acknowledging your trauma, acknowledging what you feel. You know what I mean? Which feels like a new idea for Black and brown men, or people who witness Black and brown men. And also the thing that I love the most is that they're holding each other accountable to actually do it.
Yes.
To be in process, to say it's okay to feel that stuff, for you to be your brother's keeper in a way and say, no, it's okay. Go there. We got you,
Absolutely.
brother, you know?
Yeah, no, and everybody works as a group to call people in or reach out when somebody seems like they're really struggling with something. It's like intuitive. I would say it's intuitive, but it's a practice. There is a line in the film said by a character named Brent. Brent is played by Paul Racy. Fantastic performance. Brent's like a volunteer facilitator, director for RTA, getting people to open up and share about their lives as a way of building trust as artists together. And at one point, he remarks on how much the group has grown as actors through connecting with each other. And he says,
just being real with each other and vulnerable. It's something men don't really get to do too often.
It felt like something real that a person would say.
Yeah.
But it also felt like a good meta commentary without feeling like it was trying to call my attention to something artificially.
Yeah.
But that line really stood out to me. It said so much.
It does, you know, and I think what stands out as well is that, like, here we are in this space playing theater games. And what he's saying is, like, this is real work. And it's real work to get in touch with who you are on the inside so you can apply it to these characters. But that's also giving you some life tools, whether you know it or not. You know? So, and it's very real, and it's very honest and sincere. And that is going to move you forward in the world. When it struck me, when I was approached with this film and I got the information that there was a less than 3% recidivism rate amongst men and women who go through these programs,
Wow.
I thought, wow, this is truly something that's really doing the work. And they're doing the work and holding on to this work for themselves, for their humanity, for their future. You know, so it is a very hopeful film in that way, that they're like, oh, I actually have some tools to help me do the work.
Well, tools, but also the other thing that I came away from the film with was how prison robs people of the time and opportunity to find and enjoy things that they love. Like you said, having tools is is definitely, I think, a huge part of it. But also, I also felt like so much of the film was watching so many men, specifically a character named Divine Eye, played by the great actor Clarence Macklin, seeing so many of these men bloom as artists, like before your eyes, but seeing them find things that they loved to do, things that they love about the world, and things that they love about themselves. It made me think about the loss to the arts, really to humanity, by not everybody getting the same kind of time and opportunity to actually enjoy participating and creating, right? And also the loss in who gets to perform and enjoy creating. I don't know, but I'm curious if you had any reflections on that.
I don't know. I know the film is not trying to, in any way, shape, or form, we're not being political. We're not calling out anything about truly about the prison industrial complex. It is really looking at a slice of life of these men who have committed themselves to change. These are people who are incarcerated for whatever reason, but they're human. And what do we want our society to look like? What tools do we want to give folks if they're willing and wanting to do the work to become better? That's it. And it's just very human. I remember when I first started out, I was touring around to junior high schools and high schools performing. And I would note that arts programs were severely cut. And the first things to go, art. I thought, well, why is that? Well, I grew up with arts programs. Why is that? I'm like, you cut off the art, you cut off the soul, you cut off people understanding how to be human with each other. I think, and find different depictions or to illustrate it or to feel it or to move with it or to find music within it to show that we're alike more than unalike. You cut that out of schools, I feel like there's a path to the prison industrial complex. You dehumanize us. We can't see each other. Art is not frivolous. Art connects us, and we need it in our society. We need it in our schools. A lot of these men who went through this program, they say, if I had something like this growing up, I probably would never have been here. I would have another way to get out what was inside of me.
Something else I want to talk about, if I could speak bluntly for a second. I see you, and I know the others do as well, because I've read profiles and interviews with you where people bring this up, but as a kind of celebrity movie star that hasn't really existed previously so robustly. I mean, you've been working as an actor for, over 3 decades, and, you are an openly gay Afro-Latino man, and you've become a mainstream star in your 50s. And as an Afro-Latino man in your 50s, the way that Hollywood works and the way that the world works, we've all seen it time and time again, people getting typecast over and over and over and over again. And yet you have had a phenomenal range of roles across mediums, okay, like stage, television, film, and plenty of leading roles apart from all that. And also you seem to be living a really beautiful life.
I do.
Those check a lot of the boxes of many people's definitions of success. And so I wonder, how do you think about your success today?
What a beautiful question. I think it's hard earned. So I think that I actually told a group of students this last night. I know that what I've built is because I built it. There's no blueprint for who I am in this industry. But I've always believed that I can play anything. I can be anything. And one season last year was my favorite season because I thought, if you can see me play Bayard Rustin, a queer civil rights hero, in the same season as you're watching me play one of the most villainous men in Alice Walker's work, The Color Purple, Mr., at the same time, you get an idea of exactly who I am. And the wildest thing is, I shot Color Purple and then went back to my Rustin, but in between, I shot Sing Sing. So people can see 3 very different men that I shot within a matter of 1 year. Since the very beginning, I made sure that I embarked on a path where I felt like I had no limits. I didn't put any limitations on my own talent, whether being a Black man, being an Afro-Latino man, being a queer man, being a man from West Philly, being from the inner city. If I put any of those limitations on me, then the world will do the same thing. But for me, I've always believed that I was limitless.
I love that reflection. You built it yourself. That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Colman. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Brittany.
That was Colman Domingo, star and producer of Sing Sing, which is in theaters now. This episode of It's Been a Minute was produced by
Barton Girdwood,
Alexis Williams,
Liam McBain,
Corey Antonio Rose.
This episode was edited by
Jessica Placzek.
Engineering support came from
Patrick Murray.
Our executive producer is
Jasmine Romero.
Our VP of programming is
Yolanda Sanguini.
All right, that's all for this episode of It's Been a Minute from NPR. I'm Brittany Luce. Talk soon.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Merrill. Whatever your financial goals are, you want a straightforward path there. But the real world doesn't usually work that way. Merrill understands that. That's why, with a dedicated Merrill advisor, you get a personalized plan and a clear path forward. Go to ml.com/bullish to learn more. Merrill, a Bank of America company. What would you like the power to do? Investing involves risk. Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith Incorporated, registered broker-dealer, registered investment advisor, member SIPC. This message comes from NPR sponsor Viking, committed to exploring the world in comfort. Be inspired to plan a small ship voyage to France in 2025. With an exclusive docking location in the heart of Paris and privileged access experiences, Viking brings curious travelers closer to the most iconic destinations across France. Discover more at Viking.com.